So this is at the front desk, and it's well worth $14. So that's, please buy one afterwards.
Thank you, Jack. I'll pay you.
Actually, I'm going to give this to you, Giuseppe.
I'm sorry?
I'm just going to let you hold that.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to not go too on forever about these things, but I want to sort of touch with some salient facts. I guess, first of all the large ones, this one, that one, this one, were all done here in Portland. The rest were all done in Italy. And I spend a fair amount of time in Italy every year. And I obviously they're the smaller ones because they're easily portable and easily shippable. But any of the smaller pieces were done in Italy, and the larger ones were done here. But the larger ones are all done from studies done in Italy. So I think of them as having a particularly Italian connection. And I'm going to talk just briefly about the technical parts of this because there are some new things going on that I've not done before. Now, I've been going to Italy for a lot of years, and I've looked at a lot of great art there. And maybe it's because my skull is so thick, but it's just now starting to seep into my brain what those guys were actually doing. And what they were doing was not so much what I had been doing up to this point, which is direct painting, where I just paint. Don't take anything off, just keep adding. So add the kind of thing, just direct painting. And I've lately been doing more indirect painting, which means lots and lots and lots of glazing. It sort of makes sense because my first love was watercolor. When I was a kid, growing up, I did a lot of watercolors, and watercolor, of course, is transparent. Your layered transparent layers upon transparent layers upon transparent layers. And what you start off with is definitely not what you end up with. I mean, it's all about these visual mixing of these strata, very thin strata of colors. So anyway, I started this last spring on the larger pieces. I started doing a lot of glazing. I've always done a lot of glazing on the smaller pieces because I paint them horizontally. I don't paint them vertically. And so the transition between doing direct painting and glazing, there is no transition in terms of the verticalness of the painting. It seems horizontal. You can lay down very, very liquid layers of paint and leave them horizontal. If you lift them up, of course, they run. So the smaller paintings have been, I've been glazing for a long time, but it was the first time, and really for a long time, for the larger paintings. Some of the areas, the painting behind, the larger painting behind, those two areas in the center and on the lower right have, I would say, some of them have 10 layers of glazing on them, some have 15 layers of glazing on them, and so each color that you see in those particular parts of the painting is a single glaze. So there's lots and lots and lots of time involved in these pieces, getting them to dry just right, because you want them to be slightly tacky when you put the next layer on, so that it really attaches quite well. So that's what's going on new in these larger pieces, and since for a long time in smaller pieces. The imagery are things that are. I've always been very much attracted to landscape. I've always been very much attracted to still lifes. I like those a good deal. I occasionally, very, very occasionally, do figurative stuff, and it's mostly portraits of my grandson. That's about all I do in terms of figurative stuff. Recently, I used to do more, but now I do less, except for portraits of family members. But anyway, so still life and landscape are the two primary sources. The more abstract elements, and everything that you see in these paintings, all are things that are things that are close to me, that I see every day. The painting behind here, for example, the pavement is the pavement outside my studio. That's this street. Pavements on my street, and this area here is the main gates. There are two towers. There's another one over here that I just didn't like. So, but this is one of the towers at the main gate of my town, and this is from a landscape that a friend of mine over here, she and I went on a hike to Santiago in Spain, Santiago de Compostela. As we're taking the train across to Santiago, looking down we're coming down into the plains, And this is something we saw on the planes, and I did some immediate drawings of it. And that's an image. And you'll see these images repeated a lot because I like to, and I do that a lot. I'll bring back images that I used 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Because I think of those things as sort of like actors in a repertory theater. So they come back from time to time in different roles. So that's a lot about the technique and the composition. It is just really just a straight robbing of the polytypic paintings that I see all the time in Italy, the multi-paneled paintings, which would be usually the life of a saint, for example, or somebody of religious importance. And they have a whole, the main part of the painting usually has a singular event in this person's life. And then down below there's a long strip, the predella it's called, that generally is a series of across a person's entire life, the birth, the conversion or whatever significant things happened in their life would be along the bottom. So you have this multi-paneled, usually a central panel, a couple panels on either side that would either have decorative elements like a lily or some kind of symbol of whoever the saint is. So that, you get these multi-panel kinds of things, but they're really meant to be seen as a unit. Well, that's what I'm doing here essentially, is I'm putting together these panels, and I'm putting them together in a way that you as a viewer are going to be, you're going to be providing the narrative. Okay, so in those paintings in Italy and all over Europe, in the church, there is a very specific narrative, and it makes good sense because when those things were painted, the majority of the people were illiterate, and they needed to have these kinds of images presented in a very specific kind of way, a very specific kind of chronological sequence, so that you could get the message of what this person did, why that person was significant in terms of Christianity, Christianity. But anyway, what I've done is I've taken a lot of the compositional elements and I've set them up so that you provide the narrative, and there will be a lot of, there are lots of repetitions. Sometimes it's pattern, sometimes it's shape, sometimes it's variation on the shape. This, for example, this shape is really that shape there. So I will take a single shape and start doing theme and variation, almost as improvising in music, like a jazz kind of idea where you take one theme and you change it, you put it in different situations, you change the color, you change the texture, and it becomes a different thing. But it automatically begins to tie these things together, and that's what's part of it is the divisions, and part of it is the repeating of these forms and variation that gives it a kind of theme that you can begin to read them as a story. Now, I have my own stories that involve these things because these things are that I've seen. This is clearly something I've seen. This is something that I see in my neighborhood a lot. These flowers and this landscape. Is something that I see. These things are all from around my area, and so they have a very specific meaning to me when I read them, but they're not going to do that. You're not going to have that same kind of experience. So I'm setting up this is a situation in which you're providing the narrative, and I kind of enjoy doing that, and I think it's a good way to involve the viewer in these pieces. So that's going on there. So anyway, these things are all, again, they're all things that I've seen. I do drawings. I rarely take photographs, but I do drawings all the time. And then I have a whole collection of drawings. A lot of people do this. It's not something that's original. But we'll just lay these drawings out side by side and begin to shift them around, almost collage-like, until I get something that begins to make sense visually, begins to make sense in terms of the narrative that I'm trying to get across. So that's essentially the painting. I can talk about very specific things. Now, the two pyramids, that you'll see a lot of these things. This